brand new music here at Hard Knock Radio, KPFA, KPFB in Berkeley.
What you gonna do? Yeah. What you gonna do? Yeah. I can't stand the news, can't stand the way they abuse and use me and you. I choose to be the one, the win, the wise, the one fools. My feet is on the floor and my back's against the wall. When you ask me what's in store, I speak all out war. Yes, beans and cornbread, everybody's fighting. Tension is rising, and still we keep climbing, and still I stay climbing, and still you stay climbing. Won't you stop? 'Cause I've heard it all before. I'm not a little girl no more. Where I once was insecure, now I see you're standing in my way, and I need to get over. Been on this way a while, and I know just what you're thinking. That's It's yours, and as hard as they try, they can't make it right away. Won't you stop? 'Cause I've heard it all before. I'm not a little girl no more. And where I once was insecure, now I see standing in my way, and I need to get over. I do. I need to get over. Every day is so wonderful, and suddenly it's hard to breathe. Now and then I get insecure from all the pain. I'm so ashamed. I am beautiful, no matter what they say. You
Well, once I lived the life of a millionaire, spending my money, I didn't care. Taking my friends out for a mighty good time, buying bootleg liquor, champagne and wine. Then I began to fall so low. Couldn't find me no friends, had no place to go. If I ever get my hands on a dollar again, I'm gonna hold on to it till the eagle grin. I said, nobody knows you. When you're down and out, in your pockets, you ain't got one penny, and your friends, you didn't have any. Just as soon as you get up on your feet again, here they all come. They say that they're your long-lost friends. Oh, Lord, without a doubt, nobody wants you. Nobody needs you. Nobody wants you when you're down and out. I say, nobody wants you. Nobody needs you. Nobody wants you when you're down and out.
It's a mighty long road that my poor hands have walked. My poor feet have traveled a long, dusty road. Out of your dust bowl and westward we rode. Your deserts was hot and the mountains was cold. I worked on your orchards of peaches and prunes, slept on the ground by the light of your moon. At the edge of your cities you will see us, and then we come with the dust and we're gone with the wind. California, Arizona, I made all your crops, but it's north up to Oregon to harvest your hops. Dig the bees from the ground, pick the grapes from your vines, to set on your table your light sparkling wine. When did you come to America the free? Who are your ancestors? What is your creed? Who is the Father and the Son and the we? Where is the spirit that sought liberty? When did you come to America? Long, long before, when the buffalo walked. When did your hands burn like gold? The thing that made this land your pride and your joy. When did you come to America? I came to help you grow.
Please welcome to the stage MSU Professor in Philosophy and African American and African Studies and founder of the Transformative Justice Speaker Series, Cerces Mendez.
Good evening. Yes, good evening, good evening. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here tonight. Oh, thank you. First of all, I want to say that folks said that probably there wasn't going to be that much interest, but I want you to take a look around. There's a lot of people here tonight, so give yourselves a round of applause. So as you know, I have to do like 1,000 thank yous, right? So we're gonna try to get through this. First of all, I wanna thank all of our sponsors, the College of Arts and Letters, the College of Communication, Arts and Sciences, the College of Education, College of Music, College of Natural Science, College of Social Science, Honors College, and University Outreach and Engagement for this particular night, yeah? All right, so I'm gonna read a bunch of other thank yous and I'll tell you when to applause, okay? Is the deal? All right, cool. Tonight, Tarana Burke's visit was also made possible by the generous support of folks who supported the Transformative Justice Speaker Series when it wasn't yet a thing, right? And these are the people, these are the collectivities on our campus who said this was important long before other folks jumped on. So those sponsors were, again, the College of Arts and Letters, the Department of Philosophy, African American and African Studies, Lyman Briggs College, American Indian and Indigenous Studies, Chicano and Latino Studies, the Center for Gender and Global Context, Peace and Justice Studies, the Chimnick Chair in the Humanities, and the MSU Women of Color Initiatives. So I do want to give a particularly special thank you to Dean Chris Long for living into his values and making this event a reality. Not only, yes, you can give him an applause. Yeah, definitely. Not only did he provide a generous amount of resources, but he surrounded me with a dream team. I cannot tell you how these people have been working, okay? They put in countless hours, and just from the College of Arts and Letters, we have Melissa Staub, Ryan Kilcoyne, Ryan Frederick, Kim Popielek, and Josh Morey. We have Alyssa Bradley from IT Services. We got our Wharton Center team, who's doing the most right now. Steve Ouellette, Matt Cribbs, Nina Silbergleit, Steve Heinrich, Anna Whitman, Rosalind James. We have folks from the Meta Peace team, Mary Hannah, who came out to say, you know what, we also want to start talking about what de-escalation might look like and what community safety might look like, right? We have the Kellogg team, who carved out a space for our first ever Me Too youth delegation. What's up? Some of them are here. Beth Rhodes and Sue Lindstrom. I want to thank our sign language interpreters for the night, April Davidson and Jenny Welling. And my incredible Women of Color collective of graduate students who were there from the visioning to the completion of this work. We have Ayanna Spencer, Bria Harper, Blair Saeed, and a little special shout out to Shelby Meisner as well. So for anyone who's ever tried to plan anything, there's a whole lot of unseen labor. I want you to take note of what it means to create a space for others to begin this conversation. Take note of who does this labor. They are often the unsung heroes of our movements. As I have been taught by so many radical women of color feminists before me, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge also the unseen labor of the people who take care of this building every day, who clean the toilets, who mop the floor, who take out the trash, right? who care for our campus. They too make this work and this gathering possible. We see you and we thank you. Finally, I want to acknowledge that Michigan State resides on the territories of the three Fire peoples, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and the Potawatomi. As we work, live, and move through these territories, we must recognize that these lands were stolen through great violence. This included the rounding up of indigenous people in the early 1800s when this university was founded. I want to acknowledge that part of this work is attending to the ongoing impact of colonization and settler colonialism, communities' struggle for self-determination, colonial state violence, and the recognition of indigenous sovereignty. Okay. So for this evening, I want to set a few intentions so that we're clear what we are here to do tonight. The first thing we are here to do tonight is to raise hard questions. We realize that the work is not easy. If it was, everybody would be doing it already. So tonight is about raising those critical and necessary questions that can open the door to transformation. So we want to begin to get clear on what justice looks like for differently situated survivors. What do we mean when we say we want accountability from our institutions and our communities? And what kind of changes are we each willing to make in order to ensure that our institutions and our communities are places where sexual assault is the exception and not the norm? Tonight is also about centering survivors and survivors' healing. It's so easy to get derailed from this focus. We understand that healing is not linear and that despite how people talk about it, it's actually a lot of hard work, right? And we are often left with too few tools and resources for finding a way forward. So it is for this reason that we want to make sure that all of you join me in helping make survivors' healing the center of tonight's focus. 3, self-care. We recognize that these discussions can be hard. They are often uncomfortable. And the work is uncomfortable. So we want you to sit with that as long as you can and struggle through, get to the other side. This work may also be triggering for folks. So we've prepared a space for folks to go if you feel triggered by the conversation. If you need to step outside, take care of yourself first and foremost. If you want to know where that space is, ask an usher to take you there. And there are therapists there waiting to talk with you if you feel triggered at any point during the evening. Connections. Tonight is also about making connections. This includes identifying the structural barriers that make it hard for us to respond to survivors' needs in a human way. It is about connecting with each other so that we are better able to support the youth movement building and all of the movement building that folks are trying to do right now. It's also building bridges to those who are doing the work in our communities already. Some of those folks you're going to meet tonight: Tajmika Torek of the Firecracker Foundation. I'm about to introduce her in a minute, so y'all get ready, okay? But there's also folks in the audience: Piwa Langeni from the Salas Center, Tara Scott, 3 Jewels Yoga, Belinda Thurston from Just Be Yoga. That's right. Look around. We need each other to do this work. So before you leave tonight, try to make a connection. The last thing we want to set is, tonight is about honoring and celebrating the beautiful and transformative work that Black women and women of color, as well as queer, trans, and gender nonconforming folks have done to help us cultivate our imagination for a world free of violence and harm. And just so you know what this means showing up every day. okay? Every day to build up our community-based responses, to help us have better language, to address harm in our communities and harm between communities, and to cultivate radical paths for healing for a diverse range of survivors. These are our frontline workers. So in addition to activist warriors like Tarana Burke of the Me Too movement, we also have folks out here like Aisha Shaida Simmons, #LoveWithAccountability. We have Mimi Kim of Creative Interventions. We have Ignacio Rivera of Project Heal. We have Aaron Esposito from the Advocacy Services for Abused Deaf Victims. We have Luz Marquez Benbow of Arc of Rensselaer. Strong Oak Lefebvre from Visioning Bear Circle Intertribal Coalition. Shira Hassan from Just Practice. Ejaris Dixon from Vision, Change, Win, and Mia Mingus from the Bay Area Transformative Justice Collective, and there are so many more. So if you don't know these names, if you've never heard these names, look these folks up because they are out here doing it for us. All right, so on to my first guest. It is with great honor that I would like to introduce one of our very own local activist warriors, Tajmika Turek. Tajmika is a nationally recognized survivor activist working to end child sexual abuse right here in Lansing. She is a powerhouse fundraiser and movement maker who has raised thousands of dollars and thousands of volunteer hours in support of her work. As the executive director of the Firecracker Foundation, she incites riots of generosity and advocates for the healing of children and families every day. The Firecracker Foundation spearheads trauma-sensitive yoga in the Lansing area and provides services to the Lansing School District. They provide services to Child and Family Services Angel House, community mental health, and to youth and families in our community. There is such a need for these services that last year, Tajmika had to move to a bigger place, right? So that she could provide mental health therapy, trauma-sensitive yoga, caretaker support groups, and crisis intervention all under one roof. And today, together with the grad students I mentioned earlier, Ayanna Spencer and Bria Harper, she helped to inaugurate the first Me Too teen delegation in Lansing. Since arriving to Lansing, I have felt immensely blessed to have encountered and been able to work with this firecracker of a storyteller and nearly retired roller derby skater. She is partnered by a talented talent staller who doubles as a behind-the-scenes volunteer, yes, and is about to open his own business. Hello. She's also a fierce mama to 3 incredible boys. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Tajmika Turek.
Hi. Hi, good evening. Thank you, Cersis. Tonight, I am so honored and so humbled and so happy to be able to share the stage with people who have changed my work and have changed the way that I see working to end child sexual abuse. So I am delighted to be here with Tarana and Cersis and Bria and Ayanna. Before I say anything about the organization I founded or the current climate at MSU, it is important to me to take a moment to say to you, my beloved community, I am so sorry for all that you've endured, for all that you've experienced throughout the course of the Nassar case and beyond. To all of the survivors in the room, you did not deserve the victimization, the victim blaming, the onslaught of triggers, and the ineptitude of your presidents and administrators. I'm very, very sorry. I don't think people have said that enough to you. I stand here before you as a survivor of child sexual abuse and incest. I am the founder and executive director of an organization that is survivor-led, survivor-focused, trauma-informed, and trauma-sensitive. The Firecracker Foundation is committed to the idea that once a child comes forward, despite the risks that they face, it is our job as a community to invest in the healing of their whole being. That is how we honor their bravery. In addition to individual therapy and support groups for parents and guardians, we are the only organization in the area offering clients trauma-sensitive yoga and pediatric medical advocacy services. Trained volunteer advocates are on call 24 hours a day to respond to children and teens visiting the hospital for forensic examinations, or as you probably know them, rape kits, after sexual violence has occurred. July 31st, we will celebrate our 5th year since I founded the organization. Yeah. So I like to think of the organization as a child, and it's going to kindergarten. As we have been working to protect and heal children, I've been thinking a lot about what's been going on around us. And the fact of the matter is that the leadership at Michigan State University has made children in this area more vulnerable. Those who are charged with the care of children and students failed to respond to young people coming forward about the abuse they were suffering. So Michigan State University is not a compound, it's not a gated community that doesn't impact the rest of us. And the Nassar sister survivors are only a small representation of the sibling survivors that exist because of the way that MSU has consistently failed to hold perpetrators accountable. This is not a new problem. And although many survivors are saddened by the heightened awareness, we are not surprised. We are disgusted. We are aggrieved. We are angry. And we are determined to take this moment to shift the culture at MSU and in our community. So many of us are living in fear and pain because of the tidal wave that was the Nassar case. But we know that Nassar is not the beginning, nor will he be the end of the epidemic of sexual violence on campus or in our community. If we know this to be true, and we can start moving Nassar and Michigan State University out of the center of our focus, what kind of transformative culture change can we make happen right here in our hometown? Here's what I'm interested in. I like to be clear about my ulterior motives. I'm interested in talking about where individuals have power within this gigantic institution. Where are the small units within the greater institution that are ready and willing to engage in shifting their own culture? We cannot, nor should we, always depend on those at the top to be equipped or interested in being accountable and responsible for us to be able to change the ways that we respond to sexual violence. What can you do? Figure out what your work is and do it. We do not have to wait. And waiting on a former governor that changed the law to allow teens to be incarcerated as adults and subsequently sexually assaulted to do the right things by survivors is likely not going to get us the results that we want. I am not a betting woman. I'm actually very cheap when I go to the casino. You can ask my husband. As soon as I win $8, I'm ready to leave. But if I could bet, I would not bet on Angler, and I would not bet on your trustees. So what should MSU do then? How should they be accountable and responsible moving into the future? So here are the messages that I have heard from your leadership. Legalistic approaches that protect our money are our priority. We treat survivors and their labor with disdain and reproach instead of being grateful that they would take the time to try and improve your institution. An effort they don't owe you, and MSU, frankly, doesn't deserve. We prioritize our brand over your safety, justice, and healing. We are not responsible for the ways that our institutional failings impact your community. The fact is that MSU has an opportunity to change the game, and they are squandering it. But you, Spartans and community members alike, you are not undone by those in power. You can, if you choose to, rise up to ensure that the next Board of Trustees is properly vetted. You will listen to the brilliant, nationally recognized experts already on your campus. You will stop, yes, you can give them a hand. You will stop maintaining the expectation that survivors have to trot out their trauma publicly for this institution to treat them with dignity and respect. You will find the places where you wield power and you will use it. Michigan State University, you have a responsibility to all of us. Do better.
Can I get a well? No, let me stop. I told you tonight was about asking the hard questions, y'all. That's right. So tonight, I'm very excited to be welcoming the third speaker in the Transformative Justice Speaker Series, Tarana Burke. Before introducing Tarana, I do want to take a moment to talk about the Transformative Justice Speaker Series and what the hopes for that work were. How many of you have ever heard of transformative justice? Okay, a little handful. I love that. Okay, so for those of you who haven't heard about it, and part of the work that we've been doing with Tajmika and a few others in the community is asking ourselves, what would transformative justice look like here in Lansing? I think Kelly Hayes and Mariam Kaba describe it best when they write, quote, "Transformative justice is not a flowery phrase for court proceedings or court-like proceedings that deliver the outcomes we like. It's a community process developed by anti-violence activists of color, in particular, who wanted to create responses to violence that do what criminal punishment systems fail to do." So what's the focus, right? We want to build support and more safety for the person harmed. We want to figure out how the broader context was set up for this harm to happen. So we're looking at the conditions, not just the harm itself, right? And we want to change that context. We want to mess with those conditions. We want to shift the conditions so that this harm is less likely to happen again in the future. It is about challenging ourselves away from our punitive impulses to prioritize healing, repair, and accountability. So transformative justice includes accountability processes. It also includes a bunch of preventative strategies that seeks to minimize harm in our communities, particularly for those most marginalized. And it's clear that some of us are in the place where we can't call the state or rely on our institutions for help when things happen to us. So what do we do for those people, right? If going through a process isn't an option for us, are we left with nothing? That's unacceptable, right? So transformative justice When I began this research and series, I did it because I wanted our community to start talking about more transformative justice approaches to sexual assault on campuses, actually, nationwide, because this is a problem nationwide. I did it because I knew far too many of our most marginalized students, women of color, our queer, trans, and gender nonconforming students, our first-gen and low-income students, too many of them were falling through the cracks. So the goal of this series, again, is to start asking critical questions and figure out what can our accountability toolkits look like? What kinds of models do we need for universities, for schools, for our communities, so that we can do better, as Tajmika said. So far, this series has brought folks like Mimi Kim, who talked about the impact of carceral feminisms. If you don't know what that is, look it up. And her work doing creative interventions in domestic violence. We had Mia Mingus come through here from the Bay Area Transformative Justice Collective, who introduced us to her work on child sexual assault and her efforts to build more robust accountability and community building strategies. And tonight, we have Tarana Burke, who is going to talk to us about healing and what it means to do that healing through empathy and joy. So who is Tarana Burke? She's an activist and a community organizer who coined Me Too while working at Just Be Inc., a nonprofit that she founded in 2003 that focused on the health, well-being, and wholeness of young women of color. And this is really important to me because a lot of the work that folks do focusing on folks of color, I know I use folks a lot in that sentence, but a lot of the work that people do focusing on communities of color actually benefit a lot of people. So I think it's important to recognize that. Me Too was part of a grassroots campaign to promote empowerment through empathy and healing for survivors of sexual abuse, particularly in underserved communities. In addition to working at Just Be, or the work at Just Be, Tarana Burke is also the senior director at Girls for Gender Equity, a Brooklyn, New York-based intergenerational nonprofit organization that works to end gender-based violence, where girls and women of color live and learn. In this work, she has organized intersectional workshops to help young girls connect to a sense of worth and give girls the foundations to thrive. She has also done workshops focused on improving policies and responses to sexual abuse at schools, workplaces, and places of worship. Since the beginning of the year, Me Too has since developed into a worldwide movement. Millions of people have used this hashtag across the world. And Time magazine named Burke one of a group of prominent activists dubbed the Silence Breakers, and as Time's Person of the Year for 2007. And if you haven't checked the news, she's also one of Time's 2018's top 100 most influential people. You know, we're really lucky to have her tonight, and part of the reason she came here is because of her commitment to community ties. We were lucky enough to have three people that she knows in this town. Ayanna Spencer was her intern at Girls for Gender Equity. We had met at a conference on sexual assault. She knows Tajmika from a fellowship that they're both a part of. And on a personal note, when I met Tarana last year at a conference where the theme was Weaving a World Without Violence, Transformative Possibilities, we were there all hanging out, you know, this posse of change makers and troublemakers, clowning everything. And one of the things I most remember about that encounter was this story she told about the conditions that had kept her silent for so long, the nuanced way in which she spoke about the spectrum of gender-based violence, and the ways in which she wished she had been able to say "me too" to some of the young women looking to her to help them through. It was in the midst of her contagious laughter, her awesome sense of style, as you will see, and her very empathetic approach that I was finally given the courage and the space to say out loud, "Me too." So before bringing her out on this stage, please let me direct your attention to a short video we put together to honor her work. Thank you.
Me Too movement.
The Me Too movement.
The Me Too movement.
Me Too.
Me Too.
Me Too. Me Too.
Me Too.
Me Too, just two beautiful words that Tarana started.
The message has already gone viral on the internet in France. Women in Paris Sunday were making sure it was heard loud and clear on the streets as well.
Sexual violence touches everybody. You're either a survivor or you know one.
1 in 5 people, men and women, said Me Too.
It's about supporting survivors of sexual violence and providing resources to those who have the least access to the tools for healing.
Well, this is just the start, and I've been saying from the beginning that it's not just a moment, it's a movement. And so with movements take time and they build over time and they're strategic. I think now the work really begins.
Please welcome to the stage founder of the Me Too movement, Tarana Burke.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank y'all. Thank you so much. I will never not like that. Oh, wow. I need to move this. It's kind of weird to have a mic right there. Just gonna. How's everybody doing? This feels like spring might be coming, huh? I don't know what winter did to hold it hostage, but prayerfully we can pay the ransom and get some spring, right? So we're gonna have a lovely conversation tonight about the movement, but I wanted to come out and talk to you a little bit before we start, just because these community conversations, which is what I think of these as community conversations, are really important to me in this moment, because the work that I'm doing right now, besides all of the work that we're doing behind the scenes to build this thing up for everybody, a large part of the work that I'm doing right now is trying to change the narrative, right? Trying to change what the popular story is, what the dominating story is about the Me Too movement, so that we can actually get to the nuts and bolts of what has to happen in order to make progress in this moment. We have a really unique opportunity, I think. This is how I think of it. I think of it as a really unique opportunity. I had no idea that my work would be thrust into the spotlight 6 months ago, and that people would listen, and that people would even believe that a 44-year-old black lady from the Bronx had created a thing that could help people all over the world. But they did. Who knew? And so my daughter thinks it's so funny. I'm just like, you're the oldest person in the world to go viral. Damn millennials. But what has happened is that we have this really wonderful opportunity, and I think it's helpful for some folks, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but I think it's helpful for some people to understand where this came from, so they can understand why I talk about it the way I do and where we're going. And where this came from is it started as a grassroots movement. And a lot of folks may have read stuff, but the stuff on the internet is bad, y'all. It's just bad. There's a Wikipedia page that says I'm from Queens. I mean, no disrespect, but I'm from the Bronx. It's important to get that right. Yeah, so it's really good to hear directly from a person, and also for me to kind of look at people, see people. You know, I think it's important to look folks in their eyes and talk to them directly and speak to you heart to heart, so you understand that this is not about creating yet another internet celebrity or another, you know, thing that's here today and gone tomorrow. We are trying to make sure that this is not a moment, that this is just one moment in a longer movement. And so 12 years ago, I was living in Selma, Alabama, and I'm gonna try to keep it short. Like, it sounds like one of those Sophia from the Golden Girls stories, right? Picture it, Selma. But yeah, I was living in Selma, Alabama, and I come from a long line of, not necessarily my family, but elders and people who are my mentors of community activists and organizers. And I've been organizing since I was 14 years old. And as an adult, I went on to do social justice work and organizing work in the South, particularly in Alabama. And so at one point, my friends and I realized that the young people that we were working with, the girls in that group needed a different kind of attention. And I'm real careful about it. Now, I don't think they needed more attention, but they needed different attention. And so and that attention was around, you know, a lot of times when people deal with children, particularly girls of color, it's all about like building their self-esteem, right? We're gonna create a program and make you build your self-esteem. And building self-esteem is filled with platitudes and things that aren't really concrete. And so what we saw the need for was something that grounded these young black and brown girls in the reality of their worthiness, and the idea that they were worthy just because they existed. And so we named that organization Just Be, because we wanted to create a space for these children to literally just be, just exist, right? Another thing we do for girls is we always qualify their worthiness. Like, if you're worthy, if you're the prettiest or the smartest or the fastest or the this or the that, right? That's the thing that you have to add on to earn your worthiness. And what we said is that you are worthy because you exist, because you were born, because you're human, you deserve all the good things. But in doing that work, oh, well, yeah, that's a good, thank you. In doing that work, inevitably, as I've seen over the years, it happens when you gather, particularly women together in a space, the girls would consistently come forward with their stories about sexual violence. And a lot of times didn't know it was sexual violence. A lot of times it was just sharing things that had become so normalized in their life that they had no language to really describe it other than just another thing. And, you know, I feel like you know, when you go around and talk this much as I do, you tend to say the same things over and over again, but it's just the truth. And the truth is that I was raised by a community of elders who said to me consistently when we started doing community work, and they would talk to us about why being an organizer in your community was important and why not leaving your community was important. It was because community issues deserved a community response. That was a mantra for us when we were growing up, when we were coming up through these programs. And for me, I was in my 20s, but I'm looking around and I'm looking at 7th and 8th grade girls who are talking about various issues with sexual violence, and they live in that community. And so if they live in that community and they have these issues, then that automatically made it a community issue that needed a community response. But as social justice people and movement people, we had not yet made the connection, I'm saying we as in this larger group, that sexual violence and gender-based violence was a social justice issue. It was very difficult to convince people of that. And so eventually, our program that started off with just leadership development and doing youth leadership development and empowerment work became a space for us to explore how to marry these two ideas, that we have to figure out how to do individual healing with these girls who are clearly traumatized, and community healing with this group of young people who are also survivors. And the idea for me too, although had been planted as a seed some years prior to this moment, and I spent a long time trying to figure out this connection. How do I marry these two things? How do I marry healing and social justice? And finally, when we could not figure out where to get resources for these kids, when we went to the local rape crisis center and they told us they don't take walk-ins. Can you imagine? Yeah, Selma, Lord, Selma. It's not this way everywhere, and I don't say that. Sometimes when I tell this story, I don't say that to disparage rape crisis centers, because so many of them are under-resourced and understaffed, and they don't have capacity to do the things that the community needs. But whatever the reason is why you can't provide the resources, it still means there's a gap that has to be filled. And when we stopped to look around, there were just dozens and dozens of gaps. And so we started doing the work because we couldn't find anybody else to do it. We couldn't find anybody else to take it seriously enough, to be passionate about it enough, to understand it enough, to see these young girls as human being enough, as worthy enough, to dedicate this kind of time and space to. And the thing that had happened some years prior, when I was not able to say Me Too to a young person, really planted a seed in me that those two words, even if it's just a start, are enough. These words are two words that allow two people, it could just be two people, who are standing in front of each other, bearing their soul, understand that you're not alone. You're not the only one. There's power in numbers. Even if that number is just two, there's power in that. And so what started as me not finding resources and realizing that the resource I had was myself, and building from that and finding other people who are willing to use themselves, we slowly began to build a movement. It started by spreading word of mouth. We would do workshops, and people would call us and say, hey, can you come to our school and talk about that thing? Or after school, because our school doesn't want to let you come in and talk about sexual violence. So interesting to me. That's just a, and I'm gonna make a note that y'all gonna have to come out here and stop me, because y'all know I talk forever. So whenever it's time, somebody come out and say, get your hand out my pocket. No, I'm gonna finish my story. Go on, hold on. What was I saying? Is somebody, what's happening? Oh, they're switching. Hi. You see I'm terrible at this, right? What was I saying? School, okay. Thank you. What I really wanted to say was, it bothers me that these schools are afraid to let people come in and talk about sexual violence, as if your children are not experiencing that, as if the world is not telling them about it in other places. And we had such a hard time having official reasons, having them invite us in officially to talk about this, but we found ways. And so it grew steadily, and then a really interesting thing happened when we discovered, again, this is the way things work in people's mind, right? We were laser focused on young people, and then created a MySpace page. I always pause for laughter there, I know. I said I was 44. But we created a MySpace page literally just to have a place to live on the internet, like to have a website, because we were broke. And so it was just to have some place to tell people to go and read about it. But we created this page, and this incredible thing happened that adult women started coming out of the woodwork saying, thank you, I need this. How do we bring this to our community? And myself and the two sisters who were working with me at the time were like, all three of us survivors, not realizing if we're survivors, there are clearly hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of other adult survivors who need something, who nobody's talking to. Nobody talks to us, right? Not from that place. Or if they do engage us, it's from a place of pity, And I think that's, and we'll talk about that later, see. We're gonna talk about a lot of things. But after we realized that adults needed this too, I think is when the trajectory of the movement changed in a real way, because we were able to provide services for young people and work with and train young people to be leaders in this work, and also adults as allies, and adult survivors who needed the same kind of work. And then the next phase of things, and I'm telling you this because in many ways, people act like 10 years ago or 12 years ago, I found a rock that said Me Too. And I was like, oh, this might be worth something someday. And I put it on the shelf, and then I was like, hey, I got a Me Too rock. I was the first one. No, we've been working. We've been working for 12 years. And we went from young people to adults. We went from girls to boys to adult men to queer folks to just everybody, all survivors, and also practitioners, you know, doing work to make sure that these folks who do have resources, make sure that the most marginalized get those resources. And so there's a wide spectrum of work under the Me Too movement. And as we now have this international platform, we plan on expanding that work to make sure and continue to make sure that survivors are centered and that survivors have the resources that they need, whatever you say you need, not what somebody determined you need. What you say you need to craft a healing journey, and then interacting with survivors and engaging you from a place of power so that you can do the work necessary to end sexual violence, because we can do that as a community. I'm gonna stop. And I'm gonna bring out my folks. Look at that. Hey!
Thank you so much.
I'm probably not doing this right?
No, you're doing this perfect.
Oh.
How are we doing so far? As long as they're with us, it don't matter. So, you know what? I'm going to have you go over here and take a seat. Choose whatever seat you like. Yes, this is how we do things. And so now, just FYI, we've been gathering questions from audience members and folks. We had put out this thing and say, ask Tarana any question you like.
Don't do that.
So, so we got a bunch of questions, and we're going to have a moderated discussion around those questions, but before we do that, I want to actually invite two grad students, the grad students I mentioned earlier, who have been working very hard to make this happen. First one is Bria Harper, a second-year doctoral student in the English department here at MSU. As a survivor and advocate, Bria centers her work on studying the politics of pleasure and trauma in the lives of Black girls and Black women as a way to highlight the ways that these girls are creating their own literacies around their own experiences. Bria is committed to furnishing advocacy both in academia and in communities. Please welcome to the stage Bria Harper. Yes. And everybody looking so nice. All right, we also have Ayana Devante Spencer, a third-year doctoral student in philosophy here at MSU and a graduate of Spelman College. As a survivor researcher, Ayana's Black feminist work is at the intersection of epistemology and sexual violence with a focus on girls of color and U.S. education systems. Ayana is a former labor organizer, Southern activist, and Ford Fellow committed to survivor-centered advocacy and research in pursuit of gender and racial justice. Luckily for us, she too was part of the reason Tarana was willing to carve out some time in her schedule. That's right, because like I mentioned before, she interned at Girls for Gender Equity. Please welcome to the stage, Ayana Spencer. Yes, yes. Are these things on? Yes, they are. So we got questions on questions on questions. All right, so I'm just going to get this out the way because it always comes up. Y'all been watching the news. How many of you saw what Tony Robbins did? So he was in the news claiming that women who were using Me Too were using it to gain significance. Not only does this attitude speak to the countless does this not speak to the countless others besides just cisgender women that have used the hashtag? Because millions and millions of people have used this hashtag to break their silence, including, I don't know if you saw the famous Dominican author Junot Diaz, who wrote a very powerful piece and also said he wished he had these words. So, just to get it out the way, what do you say to people who characterize Me Too as a witch hunt?
Yeah, I mean, so this has been this is what I was talking about when I meant we have to change the narrative, right? It is very popular. People characterize it as a witch hunt, or they say this is about taking down powerful men. There's tons of articles. Who is Me Too going to take down next? And I always think that's really, I think it's interesting that people, that's the way it's skewed. Because, and some of that is because we have an inability to be nuanced, right? And some of it is because of the media, just straight up and down. And that's because, if you think about it, let's just take my work off the table for a second. Forget about 12 years ago, blah, blah, blah. On October 15th, when Alyssa Milano put out that very first tweet, she literally just said, if you've experienced sexual harassment or sexual abuse or sexual assault, say Me Too. That's what she said. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't call for people to do anything. And there was millions of responses to that. Before she said that, when those women, those same white women in Hollywood who people want to make into the bad guy, right? And that's another thing y'all need to watch. We will find new ways to make women the bad guy all the time.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
There's this underlying thing, like, yes, it's true as a black woman that my work could have very easily been erased. We know that. But it's also not true that those women came out to take something from me. And so there's this also popular narrative of like, aren't you mad at the white ladies in Hollywood? No. No, because those women first who got up and came forward around Harvey Weinstein didn't come forward for significance. They didn't come forward for popularity, because we've seen what happens to women when they come forward other times in the media. There's no success stories. There's nobody who came forward and told on somebody and all of a sudden they became a famous something, right? It's infamous, not fame. And so those women who came forward wanted to be seen and heard. They wanted to be believed. They wanted to not be the only ones holding their truth. And they wanted to make sure that other women didn't go through what they went through. And none of that is about gaining significance, right? And I think, you know, Tony Robbins has changed a lot of people's lives and helped a lot of people, but this is not even really about him as a person, right? What he did, and actually I'm actually kind of grateful for what he did, because what he did was shine a light on a prevailing narrative that people have but were not saying out loud, right? There's all this undercurrent. There's a lot of, look, I'm the first person to say there are a lot of legitimate things to criticize about this movement and this moment. There are things that we can have intelligent, thoughtful, critical conversations about the ways this movement has happened, rolled out in the last 6 months. That's not one of them. Saying it's a witch hunt is counterproductive, because it just cuts off a conversation that's a deeper conversation that needs to happen. Those women who came out around Harvey Weinstein did not ask for anything either. If you read those articles, they didn't even expect anything to happen, except to them. They expected to be blackballed. They expected not to have access anymore. They expected people not to believe them. They expected to be shunned. What they didn't expect was that Harvey Weinstein what happened to him happen. What we saw, and we have to be real clear, this is what I mean about nuance, or just having the ability to interrogate things when we see them and not just accept them at face value. We're accepting this as a witch hunt because people say that, right? Because it's a list. They do these articles. 71 men have been taken down by Me Too.
Right.
That's not true.
Right. Right.
Harvey Weinstein lost his job, and when we saw Harvey Weinstein lose his job and Kevin Spacey get taken out of the movie and da-da-da-da and all the rest of those things, those were corporate responses to this moment.
Right.
Those were not the responses from it's a level of accountability, yes, right? Those people have been held accountable to some degree for what they did, but that accountability, do you think that the Weinstein Company didn't know what Weinstein was doing for 20 years?
Right.
Come on.
And I think you're bringing us to that thing of complicity.
That's what
all
you
the layers
saw,
of complicity, right?
That's what it is. What you saw was the corporate response to it, saying, we don't want to be complicit in this. We don't want to be held accountable for allowing this culture in our company. We don't want somebody to say, you're accountable as well because he worked for you and you knew. So the response to that is disassociation.
Right.
So now you can't work here. Now you can't have all the accolades, and you can't come to the parties, and you can't do this and this and that. But y'all knew that man was a predator for 20-something years. Right. And so what do? They blame the women. You see what y'all did? This is a witch hunt.
Right.
Y'all trying to take down these men. That's bullshit.
Yes.
That's And I'm going to say this and go to the next question. Not only is it BS, I don't know if there's children in the audience. I'm sorry, children. But not
This
only
will
is
not be televised.
Right. This is why I don't allow taping, right? Right. But not only is it, but it's harmful because it starts this debate about witch hunts and all the rest of that as opposed to focusing on the real issue. If you have the women who came forward is a total of maybe, what, 20 women, I think? You know, somewhere in that number. Put that number up against the millions and millions and millions who came forward and said, me too.
Right, right.
That's what we should be focused on. So if the narrative is about witch hunts and all of this other kind of nonsense, can we hug in the age of Me Too? Come on, y'all.
Stop.
Stop
Right.
it.
So now y'all have your answer, okay? Next time you hear that, you heard it here.
We got work to do.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for getting us into the thick of it so quickly. But just to piggyback off of that question, so some of these accusations that are taking place, some of the critiques serve as a form of silencing for survivors. So can you talk about some of the other ways that you've seen survivors silenced, and what are some of the conditions that you've seen contribute to the silencing of all of these different kinds of survivors, and how do you see institutions promoting a culture of silence?
Ooh, we're going to take those one at a time.
Yeah,
okay. So I think that because this is in the media in such a big way, that one of the things I think I always talk about is how this is not a culture shift. We are not. The culture has not shifted yet, right? And we have to be, again, really careful about the way we talk about things because we're like, oh, culture shift? Check. Me too. We got Me Too. Let's move on to the next thing. And it's the same way I think about people saying that, oh, God, I'm so tired of hearing about Me Too. And I'm like, it's been 6 months.
I know, right?
We have a whole spectrum of sexual violence to deal with. And in the history of the United States, we have never had a sustained national dialogue about sexual violence. And 6 months later, y'all like, okay, we're done. No. So I think those narratives, those invalid narratives is another way people get silenced. I think that the other thing is that, God, we get silenced in so many ways. Yeah. The other thing is that people feel like, people have weaponized Me Too in some ways too, right? And so I get tons of folks who say to me, I really want to say Me Too, but I haven't got the courage yet, and I'm getting there. And my answer to them is always, don't. If you're not compelled to, if it doesn't come to your heart to do it, if you don't feel like it, if you don't want to share your story, do not. Right? And so people get shamed and silenced into feeling like they're not the right kind of survivor, or they're not a survivor at all. And that is wrong. It is wrong. And so we take away, here's the thing about that. When you are a survivor of sexual violence, one of the hardest parts about it is that you've lost the right to make decisions about your body, right? You've lost the right. I don't know if it's how to express how serious that is to people. The right to make decisions about your body. And so for us, every decision you make after that becomes that much more important. You want to own your decisions. Some people say that's what makes us control freaks, right? It's another story. But those decisions, owning your decisions, become very important. So if you decide to tell your story, if you decide to stand up and say, Me Too, and tell the world, then that's a wonderful decision to make, and you should own that. But if you decide not to, that's also your decision to own. And so we silence people in a way by thinking they have to, this is like some initiation to get into this movement. Yeah. No, there's nothing you have to do to be in this movement. There's no qualification except for the qualification we don't want. Right? You're in it because you're in it. And so I hate to see the way, and also I've seen us silence in other groups of people. This is another reason why I say this is not a woman's movement. Ladies, I get it, Women are largely the face, and we hear about women, we see women, the numbers tell us about the large swaths of women. Raquel Wallace, Raquel Wallace, the trans activist. I don't know if y'all know her. This sister, Raquel Wallace, she's a trans activist. She wrote a really beautiful piece about how trans voices have been left out in this moment because who's telling those stories? We also tell men that they can't say Me Too.
I've gotten a number of emails from men saying, I don't want to take up too much space, and I don't want to take away. And, you know, I tell this terrible metaphor, but I'm going to tell it anyway. Because this is how I think about it. If you discovered, and maybe it's not a metaphor, this is college, y'all tell me, it's a simile or a, I don't know. It's a story. But this is what comes in my heart when I think about Me Too as words. If I woke up one day and I found a tree, the tree in my front yard, you know, the fruit of the tree in my front yard had some kind of balm in it, right, that healed wounds. Like you just discovered this, look at this tree and it's dropping all this fruit, and when you open up the fruit, it's healing wounds, right? Would you hoard it or would you share that?
Right, that's right.
Like we have to really ask ourselves that question. If we have discovered a thing, we've discovered a language, we've discovered a way to communicate with each other, we've discovered a way to help people start a healing journey. And then you're going to say, oh, look, this is helping me. You can't have it. How dare you? So we silence people in that way by deciding. I love how folks discover something and say, well, this is mine. Well, who gave it to you? No. It's not a woman's movement, it's a survivor's movement, and I think people are silenced in that way. Last way about institutions. These institutions find new and creative ways to silence folks all the time. They silence us through these rules and regulations and these processes, right? You know, there's a lot of talk nowadays about these non-disclosure agreements that literally silence people. But institutions find new and creative ways to silence folks all the time by miring you down in process and paperwork and all of this kind of stuff that don't allow people to figure out what they need, right? So your process may not fit my needs. And so if we don't open up some of these processes and the ways that institutions govern, then people will find themselves silenced over and over again because they have no space to voice the way they need to voice. You know, filling out a little form is not maybe the way I need to say this. So there's tons of different ways, but that's a few of them.
Thank you. So I think one of the wonderful things that you just said connects to the question I want to ask. So thinking about finding your voice and how this movement is a survivor movement, could you tell us a little bit more about the difference between using victim or survivor language as part of the Me Too movement? Sort of what is a survivor movement? Why that language?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I struggle with survivor all the time. This has been not all the time, most recently, because I use it, I talk so much now about it, and I use it all the time. In our work, we have always encouraged survivor language, because just psychologically, it feels better to survive something rather than to lose something, right? If you're a victim of something, the connotation is that you've lost something. And we do lose something in sexual violence. That's not to say that. But in terms of thinking about how we move forward, as a survivor, it is getting over. It is success. There's some success in survival. And I had a mentor once who used to tell me who used to describe it as, think of a victim as in the water, drowning, right? Trying to keep their head above water. And a survivor as somebody who's just got their head right above water, so they're living. And the person standing outside the water with their hand reaching back is thriving. And so our goal is to get to thriving, right? Our goal is to live a life where we thrive. And through that, you're still a survivor. So in that name, it's about psychological reinforcement. But I will say one caveat that has struck me, because I say survivor every day, 30,000 times a day, that because I've had particularly young people come to me and say, you know, I can't wait to get like you. I can't wait to be a survivor, or I can't wait to get healed. And it always hurts, you know, it takes me back, because I have to say that I think, although I encourage survivor language, we have to be really careful, and really more than careful, we have to be really honest about what it is to be a survivor. Because I think some of us who are public survivors talk a lot about being a survivor as a thing, and we don't talk enough about survival. Like every day, what survival looks like. Being a survivor is an act of deciding every day that you're going to wake up and survive. And so this moment in time has given birth to so many new survivors that I think is really important for those of us who've been on a journey longer to be really honest about what it looks like. It's not pretty. It's hard. It is daunting. It is overwhelming sometimes. And some of those days, if I have 7 days where I have to make that decision, at least one of those days I can't do it. And that's today. That's not in the beginning of my journey. That is today, because it's hard. But the reward is worth it. You have to do it, right? The alternative is not an alternative. And so it's to say that I want people to be on the pathway to healing. I want people to find a entry point to healing. I want people to embrace being a survivor, but I want them to know that it's better than victimhood. It's better than living in that place where you're wrapped in your trauma all the time. But it doesn't mean that there's some rainbow that's going to happen. It's a rocky road, but we also are on it together, right? We're on it as a community, and so that makes a difference.
I appreciate that, because I think it draws us back to something Saoirse said earlier about healing being hard, that healing isn't linear, right? So sometimes we could think about it as you reach a certain endpoint, but instead you're reminding us that survival, right, is a practice.
That's right.
So I appreciate that.
Good. And you know, it's interesting because, you know, around a lot of Me Too and around a lot of these cases, there's all this language about accountability, what accountability looks like, justice. Oftentimes, healing is not necessarily embedded in there. So I kind of want you to talk a little bit about how you see accountability. How are you trying to expand that? What kinds of conversations do we need to be having about what justice looks like?
You're right, we don't have this conversation.
No.
And because, again, I was talking about this early in the press thing, we've been socialized to think of things as crime and punishment, period, right? And sexual violence is so nuanced and they're so varied. There's so many instances where that's just not the solution. And so, again, when I talk about centering survivors, it is also in this part of the work as well. When we talk about justice, that has to be defined by me, by the survivor, not me, Tarana, sorry. I meant like by us.
I will be defining all justice from here on.
Come to me, I will give you justice. No. But I mean, as a survivor, you have to decide what justice looks like for you, and that's uncomfortable for people. It really is. It's like, you did this crime, you should go to jail.
Well, those are the options we have available to us.
Those are the options we have available most of the time, right?
Most of the time,
And so when people start talking about alternative forms of justice and transformative justice, let me tell you, I've had the cases where this comes up the most for me over the years have been when it's in the family, first of all, right? And when it's both of the perpetrator and survivor are children, right? And I think that makes it easier for people to understand. I've had cases where it's a 13-year-old and a 7-year-old. And of course, but then you find out the 13-year-old has also been sexually assaulted, and then it's this conundrum. And I've seen folks who are like, well, they committed a crime. And I'm like, is that what we are? Is that who we are? Right? This is a systemic problem here that we have to deal with, the systemic nature of the problem, and not just what's going to happen when this 13-year-old just goes to jail and is assaulted again, or whatever. So I think it is really important for us to listen to survivors. And here's you can look this up. I'm not making this up. The Alliance for Safety and Justice is a national organization that deals with crime. It's made up of crime victims and survivors who are talking about justice, what justice really looks like. They did this nationwide study. And then we did a study specifically around sexual violence. When you talk to survivors of crime in general, they don't name the prison system as their first line of defense when it comes to crime. When you talk to survivors, even in this case, again, go back to what I said about those women and Harvey Weinstein. When they think about what they need first, it's not about what happens to the perpetrator or the perpetrator going to jail. People want healing, people want safety, people want accountability, but accountability looks different to a lot of different folks. And I think we have to also expand our thinking around accountability, because what will happen is we'll get these tougher laws, right?
Yes.
You know, so the response to Me Too movement is all this legislation, not yet, but you know, this, I can see that happening, right? Legislation and then tougher laws and all the rest. And there should be, now I will say, there should be some tougher laws around some things. We need stricter laws and accountability and oversight in some areas, but then you get these laws that have this back, what do you call that? Like a double effect, right? Not loopholes, but you think you're helping, but you're actually criminalizing another community. So,
or they more negatively impact certain communities and not others, right?
So we have to be really careful about how we go about doing that in this moment.
Right.
And again, it's another opportunity we have to shape this, because it hasn't been shaped yet.
Right, right. So, I don't know if there's, can we get like a little time check? Like, where? Because, you know, we could talk all night. Like, y'all want to see?
I just want to be clear that tonight is the finale of Scandal.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Priority. This is serious, though.
I'm so serious.
Like, this is the third time you said it.
I have invested 7 years in this program. And tonight is the last. I want to watch it live with the rest of the world. I mean, I'm going to stay.
Where's the joy question?
I'm going to find me a TV, though.
You put me in such a tough position. You put me between you and Scandal, so I don't really, you know, what do I do with that?
It's handled.
Okay, Olivia Pope. So I appreciate how much you try to center joy in your conversations of healing work. And I think a lot of people are not used to hearing joy in the same sentence with survivors. So can you talk more about why you think it's important to incorporate joy in the work?
Absolutely. This is the part where I tell y'all why I'm so silly. You're right. People are always taken back when I say that this is a joy movement. I always think about it as like level 2. I kind of got to get you in first. Right. Let's just talk about healing, but let me tell you how. And I want us to embrace that. I want us, in terms of changing the narrative, to embrace the idea of this as a joy movement. Because one, there's also this dominant, I think this is because of socialization and media, there's this dominant kind of idea of what a survivor looks like, or how a survivor has to act and be. And, you know, we're still human. We're still alive, and we still have lives to live. And the reason why I call it a joy movement is because very early, and I explained this story earlier, but I'm going to tell it again. Very early in my journey to figure out my healing, I realized that I was doing this, and other people around me as well, is that as a survivor, I had allowed my trauma, the trauma of what happened to me, to become my whole identity. It became how I lived my life. It was the definition for everything of failed relationships, didn't get a job, whatever it was because of this thing. And it was not just what happened to me, but why, the kind of person I thought I was because of it, right? I'm the kind of girl that this happens to, and I am a 3-time survivor of sexual violence. And so by the 3rd time, I just decided, okay, I'm just the kind of girl this happens to, right? I made my own category. And so it was really important to me when I was pregnant with my daughter to figure out how to save her and make sure that she had a life of joy, even if I didn't. That just wasn't, it was just like I was obsessive about it almost, right? I was like, well, once I knew I was having a girl, I was like, okay, I don't want her to come out. I don't want her to look like me. I don't want her to act like me. I didn't want her to have any part of who I was. So I wanted to create this new thing. Look at y'all, I love black folks. I can't even see y'all out there, and I know who said that.
We got our choral support going on. I shipped them in.
Because although, you know, you see me in a lot of places, a lot of this is still painful for me to talk about because I haven't talked about it. But it's important. I wanted to create a life of joy for my child that I didn't have, and I figured that I could fake it and figure out how to be joyful enough for her, to give that to her. You know those things you hear when you're pregnant, all them old ones, you got to act this way or your baby's going to get, you know, I believed all of that, right? I did. I was like, I don't want nothing to touch my baby. I used to put headphones on my stomach and all of that stuff. But what happened is that in my, I'm a Virgo. I don't know what that means, if y'all get that. And in my Virgo logical mind, I needed to come up with a plan to do this. And in that planning, I thought, okay, and I'm also a smarty art, Virgo. And I was like, I can crack this code, right? I can crack this. It is, right? I thought I can figure out how to feel, like, pretend like I have joy, and enough to sort of, she's a baby, right? To fool the baby.
Right.
And get what she needed. And so in this, like, really, it was almost like a research project. And so what I started to do was, what I knew was almost watch myself. At first I tried, I told this story earlier, at first I tried all of the, like, positive affirmations. They didn't work for me. And they didn't work because, again, in my Virgo mind, I need more. Like, I can't look in the mirror and be like, I am beautiful, I am worthy, I am, because then I'll be in the mirror like, you are lying. You know, like, I'm not a liar as, like, in general, like, I don't tell, like, lies, lying is dumb to me. I'm like, I'm gonna tell the truth, because who's gonna do something to me, I mean. So it felt like I was lying to myself. And so I thought, oh, I'm gonna document the times when I'm happy. I'm gonna start writing down what makes me happy, and when I feel joy, like there was little glimpses of joy in my life all the time. And so I literally kept a journal, and I would just write it down. I'd be like, oh, I'm happy. Oh. It was that weird, very weird.
Although that's a skill, and
it
I
is
hope
a
folks
skill.
are taking notes,
no,
right?
but I'm what I do, this is like research on yourself, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, who did that? Frankenstein, Spider-Man, somebody. I'm like a weird scientist. But I'm sorry, let me hurry up. And so what ended up happening was I would get really depressed. I would get really sad. I would have these days when I was just really, really sad, and I would pull out this journal. And almost, I used to pull it out like, oh, you're failing, right? Like, you tried to do da-da-da-da-da. But then I would read back through the journal, and I would laugh at these silly things I wrote, or I would smile, or I would get happy. And literally one day I was like, well, I have pages and pages and pages of joyful things in here. And I keep choosing to be over here. I just was like, well, Tarana, you can have joy for real. Yeah. Like, you have joy for real. Right. And it became not necessarily looking for joy, but curating the joy in my life. Right?
Curating joy.
Right,
Curating. Talk about that,
yes.
though.
It really, it became a practice for me to figure out. So then I switched gears, and I was like, you're not this person. You're both, all of this is you, right? I used to think the joy was fake and that the trauma was who I really was. And then I discovered, oh my God, this is who you are. And if you would just lean into the joy more than you do the trauma, you can do this for real. And so it became a practice, like a muscle. Like I became obsessive about it. And I also became obsessive about, as I got older, because now this took some time, y'all. This wasn't like a 6-month process, and I was like, I've discovered joy. Not at all. It was, I failed at it. I put the journal away. I was a mother for, all of that. But at some point, when I started doing the work seriously and thinking about these things that helped me, I realized that that practice that I was really serious about for very long saved my life. Because the times when I felt the lowest, the lowest, the times that you don't want to think about, that the darkest place of your mind that you go to, when I leaned into that joy, and I'd be like, Tarana, no, remember this, remember that, remember this, look at the baby, look at the smile. When I would do that, it would draw me back. And it wouldn't make me joyful in that moment, but it made me know that joy was possible in my life. And so when I started working with these children, it's so interesting when you uncover your life, when you really examine. This moment in time has made me examine my life.
Yeah. That's right.
Sorry, y'all. But when I started working with these children and telling these goofy stories to them, just like I'm telling y'all, And they would be like, Miss Joy, you know, what is that? Like, whatever. And I just was like, we're going to do this for a week. And I would make them do it like a research project, like, just write this down. And it was working. And it was working. And then I did it with my friends, and I was like, hey, y'all. We did like a joy jar or something, you know.
Project.
Yeah, you know, I'm that friend anyway. I'm like, guess what we're going to do?
And people like, are we?
Yeah.
But are we really?
And then the Virgo part of me will call you every day, like, did you document your joy today? What kind of joy did you have? I'm that person.
Some folks, they're going to get that call next week.
No.
Did you document your joy this week?
Really?
Yeah, no, seriously.
And so, to bring it all the way back, the reason why I say this is a joy movement is because I literally understand the power of curating joy in your life. And I really understand that joy can save us. And that recognize, and it's not that it's not there, we all have joy in our lives, we just sometimes can't recognize it. We won't call it a thing because we're so used to being identified by this other thing. And that trauma is real, it's all a part of your life, it's not gonna go anywhere, but it doesn't have to be the dominant thing. Like, I think of it now, I'm not to trivialize this, but I said this earlier, I'm like, yeah, these things happen. I also had chicken pox. I fell off a bike when I was so-and-so. Like, there are lots of things that have happened in my life that are traumatic to me, but they don't define me. I'm really clear, and I spent a lot of time getting clearer and clearer, and I'm still getting, this moment is giving me clarity about who I am as a person, right? I had these people last night give me this Courage Award, which was interesting to me, because I don't feel courageous, really. When I think about Heaven, who's I didn't tell that story, but the little girl who planted the seed of Me Too in me because I couldn't say Me Too to her, Heaven was courageous. At 13 years old, she stood in my face and said, hear me. I need you to see me. She knew that she needed to be seen and heard and believed at 13, and she had a thing that I didn't have. She had a courage that I didn't have. But her courage made me dutiful. I feel responsible.
That's right.
I feel a deep responsibility. Hear me out. I feel a deep responsibility for the lives that I encounter. I feel a deep responsibility to take, I don't care if it's 5 people. If it's a thing that worked, I'm going to scream it from the rooftops and say, y'all, I figured out something. Because this shit is hard to figure out. Yes. It's hard to figure out, and we spend our whole lives trying to figure out with nobody coming to help. This is what the movement is about. It's about filling in the gaps. All of these programs and services, they can't all help. Sometimes we got to figure out how to help ourselves, and when you figure something out, even if it's just a little thing, tell somebody else. Yes. That's all I'm trying to do, is tell somebody else, and then you tell somebody else. And then maybe I pray that somebody in 2 years or 5 years or 6 months figures out something even better. Yes. My prayer is that somebody will be touched by this moment and this movement so much, and they'll figure out some next thing that I never thought of. And then they'll help another generation of people. It's not about me. Y'all got me up here crying. I ain't got no tissue. I'm about to use my sleeve.
Tamika.
Look at my friend. Thank you.
I can't believe we didn't think of that.
I know, right? So I want to say one more thing, because I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, because I talk too much. Y'all shouldn't have did this.
No,
you know that.
no. Right, I was like, it was here to talk.
Excuse me.
So one of the things that Cersis highlighted earlier is that we have the foundation for a Me Too teen chapter here in Lansing. And so I'd be remiss not to shout out the young people in the audience, those that came from Angel House, Firecracker Foundation, Upward Bound. And a special shout out also to When Queens Link Up here at MSU.
Woo! Excuse me.
One of the things that I admire about your work, part of what you actually just said about the planting the seed, that bomb continues to grow over generations, is the ways in which you have included and empower other youth leaders to move forward, right? So I thank you. I know I'm looking the way that you've empowered me to lean into my own voice and my own work. And so I wanted to ask you, as sort of our final question, what do you think is the importance of the role of youth in the Me Too movement, and what advice could you give to young organizers in this work?
This movement started with young people, and I think that is lost. That's one of the tragedies in this moment, is that that's lost.
Yeah.
Even the conversations that we have start at college, right? As if sexual harassment and sexual violence doesn't happen in middle school and high school. And so I started organizing at 14. I've said that before, and that's because I was a part of an organization that had a group of elders that believed in young people and believed that we had power now, right then. And so what I would say to young people is what I always say is that you have power now. You don't have to hone skills and wait till you're an adult. Look at these children in Parkland, right? Look at these children who have been doing this work for years around. Young youth leaders have led every movement, from the civil rights movement to the Black Power movement. It's always been young people. SNCC, those are 14 and 15 and 16-year-old young people. And so, one, I would say you have power now, and you have voice now. People cannot give you a voice.
Yes.
That we're not here to give you a voice. We can amplify your voice. We can help you direct your voice, but you have a voice. And sometimes you got to help adults find a frequency where they can hear you.
Tune the radio.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't have to wait for institutions to
You don't
get
have
it
to
right.
wait for
You don't have to
institutions.
wait. Yeah.
And I love the idea of having, obviously, I love the idea of having the Me Too teen groups, because I think about what would have happened in my life if I had had somebody interrupt the path that I was on at 11 or 14 or 17, and how different my life would have been if I had learned some of these coping skills and how to heal, and learned that I wasn't alone and that there was community for me at a younger age. And so y'all can provide that for each other, and I think you will find so much healing just in the community space alone that'll be amazing for you. So I'm encouraged always. I'm inspired always by young people. And so that's what I would definitely leave young people with. You are,
Yeah.
I'm praying that some brilliant 24-year-old comes and takes this from me. People keep asking me about.
Folks get tired.
Oh,
okay?
listen, y'all just discovered me 6 months ago. I've been at this a long time.
Right.
So
right.
I'm trying to love on Ayana. I'm like, this is, I am all too happy to turn this over to a younger person, because I think y'all are brilliant.
I actually want to jump on that, because there's two things I think I want to get out here before we leave this stage.
Okay.
The first thing I want to ask is, okay, so what kinds of skills do we need to be cultivating in this moment? I mean, there's so much work to be done.
Yes.
And what are the kinds of skills that we need to be working on?
Yeah.
And practices, right, including the Joy Journal.
Yeah.
Note to self, buying Joy Journal tomorrow.
Exactly.
But the other thing I want to ask you is, a lot of folks are often asking us, what can I do right now, right? Like, what should I be working? So
I love this question, because there are so many things that we can do. Again, we get caught up in this idea that you have to be a part of a thing, or you have to create a big new thing, and you don't. Here's a couple of examples. In terms of skills, I think that the skills that we have to be cultivating is not necessarily skills we have to be cultivating, but a lot of people have skill sets right now that are useful today. And so you think, because I'm not going to go out there making speeches, or I can't organize a rally. That's okay, because everybody has a lane, and we need a body of work to happen to move the needle around this. So I always challenge, when I talk to parents a lot, not anymore, but hopefully I'll talk to them more, do my parent workshops again. But I talk to parents about thinking about, so let me just back up. Think about the gaps. That's where I always start. Think about the gaps. And if you take some time and do it in groups, you'll be surprised how many gaps come up. One of the things I ask parents all the time is to think about how many people your children interact with from the time they leave your house to the time they come back in the evening, right? And I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this for you to really be thoughtful about it. We know the general practices. We know that teachers are fingerprinted and substitute teachers have to blah, blah, blah. We don't know how they vet paraprofessionals, bus drivers, cafeteria workers. There's a case somewhere up here, is it in Detroit? There was a case recently of the black girl who was murdered, who was raped by the cafeteria worker, and during the trial, awaiting his trial, he murdered her. Now that's an extreme case, obviously, and I'm not trying to start a witch hunt, but I do think we have to be thoughtful. What would happen if a small group of parents had a meeting with the school board or the principal to say, hey, we just want to know what the practices are, right? You don't have to grab your pitchforks and go, and what y'all doing with our children? But have these conversations. We have to be the biggest, I don't know if it's a skill, but I think the first thing we have to do is be unafraid, right? This is going to take some courage. And it's okay to move forward if you're scared, if you're fearful. My granddad used to always say, if you're not scared, it's not courage. And so it's going to take some courage on our part to ask hard questions, to think outside the box. So maybe we question the schools. You can go online right now to the RAIN.org, and they have a tool on their website where you can put in your zip code and find out what legislation is coming up or is pending in your state. That might be legislation that you can get behind. That's an active thing that you can do today. But there's a number of things that you can do today, a number of ways that you can get active. Excuse me. It may even be just volunteering at the local rape crisis center. You know what I mean? But you have to want to do it. You know, we have to be motivated to do it. And I hope that folks are motivated in this moment to be more active. And know that whatever, maybe you're an accountant, maybe you're a cleaning lady, whatever, you can volunteer somewhere. There's just a lot of ways that you can use the skills that you already have to be active in movements that are happening around you.
Because we need everybody.
We need everybody.
Yeah. And one of the things, one of the things you said that I thought was really, one of the things you said that I thought was really important was with this thing about not knowing who people are. And, you know, a lot of the conversation, at least with transformative justice folks, has been that the more disconnected you are, the less accountable you are, right? So it becomes really important, like building community becomes preventative work, right? Because we know you, we can reach you, we can tug on those relationships to make you accountable in ways that sometimes state institutions can't, right?
Most times.
Yeah. All right. So, So how y'all feeling? Y'all feeling inspired? Yes?
Oh, there's no aisle.
We'll see how inspired you are when But can we get that donation slide up, though? All right, so here's what I want to say. I just want to put this up because part of the thing that we were trying to do is we didn't charge anybody to come in here tonight. This was open to the public. And part of the reason we did that was because we want folks to start making connections, and we also want folks to realize that a lot of the people out here doing the hard work are doing it on no budgets, shoestring budgets. So if you feel inspired and you met Tajmika, right, of the Firecracker Foundation, we've put up some things that you can pick up your phone right now, Venmo.com/Firecracker Foundation, put some money in there, $1, $2, we don't care. We're literally trying to raise funds for people who are doing this work in our area and who are catching a lot of the ripple effect of the harm that comes from these very institutions, right? Because as we've learned over time, violence doesn't stay in one place, right? It's not as if, oh, something happens between two people and no one else knows about it. We feel it, right?
And let me say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, people know me now, they see me now, magazines, blah, blah, blah. But when I say this was grassroots, this was this t-shirt that Xerxes has on, this is the original Me Too t-shirt, right? She got one of the pre-y'all knew me t-shirts. Right. And so that's how you know people are old school when they have those t-shirts. And we don't sell those t-shirts because a woman who I met on MySpace, while y'all busy talking about MySpace, a woman who I met on MySpace donated those t-shirts to us. And so we only give them to survivors. I didn't sell t-shirts. Now, I'm gonna give y'all a hard. I didn't have a car for almost a year in Alabama, and I had to walk from my house. That's right, in the hole. Well, but I really want people to. The reason why this is important is because I want you to underscore. I did this Me Too movement, whether it was the T-shirts, whether it was the materials. It was like, oh, y'all can't get materials this week. You can get it when I get paid next week. I built this out of my back pocket, with no resources, with small grants, people giving $2,000 and $3,000. I've never, ever gotten paid to do this work. Never. And that's because if we got any kind of money, I had to put it back in the program or we wouldn't have it. And so it really is, if you want to figure out what your lane is, your lane might be just putting $1 in the piggy bank, right? It's going to take the work of small grassroots organizations. If this wasn't tweeted out 6 months ago, and nobody found out who I was, I would still be Tarana Burke with the Me Too movement, trying to get a group of people in a room, in a church basement, or a community center, or wherever I can get folks to listen to me to do this work. And I would still be waiting for my paycheck, paying all my bills, and then taking a little bit of money to the side and doing what I had to do. And so don't wait until you know somebody. Don't wait until they're famous or on magazines or on TV to support us. This is grassroots work is what's going to change our communities. And so we need y'all to support folks like Tashmika.
Yeah. So, take a picture. If you don't want to figure out how to do it now, take a picture of the screen, take it home. And also, there's a when we get off stage. Yeah, when we get off stage. Also, there's some folks from the Me Too youth delegation also are selling T-shirts in the hall.
Yeah, I know y'all better buy them baby shirts.
Yeah. They designed shirts, which is like so inspiring. I can't even tell you. Some of them say things like, I believe you, right? So they're out there raising money for their events. So if you feel inspired, also go out there and buy a T-shirt. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Take my booger tissue.
Thank you.
Thank y'all so much. Oh, I can see people now. Yes. Look at that tall guy right there. All right, Lansing.
Coming.